these UFC fight night cards, like, we need to talk about these main events. They're not bad when they play out, but they shouldn't be main eventing cards. I believe that Steve Garcia and David Onama both deserve the spotlight of having a main event. Same with Gabriel Bonfim and Randy Brown. That being said, I can't justify it with all the title eliminator fights happening all around it. I mean, it's just saying that, oh man, these cards suck is such an understatement. Because if you're a hardcore fan and you're paying attention to who's on what, like Muslim Salikov was on the Bonfim card, Ricky Simone versus Hanmi Barcelos was on the prelims of this card. The Garcia Onama card had all kinds of fights, like Timothy Kwamba versus Lee Cheng Ho and Dante Johnson making his debut, Ketlin Vieira versus Norma Dumont, which is an actual title eliminator, Montserrat Ruiz making her return, and Alice Ardeline, who's just known as a scrapper at this point in her career, Jeremiah Wells and Themba Gorimbo. Like, there's no way that's not a fun fight. On paper, Isaac Dulgarian, we're not going to mention him throwing the fight, but on paper, him fighting Yadier Davao is a fucking crazy fight and a showcase of what the featherweight division could be in the next 3 to 4 years. Alan Nascimento is damn near ranked level at flyweight. Charles Radke is always going to go out there and try to scrap, and Daniel Frunze was a pretty decently hyped prospect. There's good fights on these cards. The problem isn't the quality of the fights, it's the quality of the main events. It is so hard to justify having these main events when of Garcia Onama. There's fucking nothing on the line. As much as they want to try to make it sound like, oh, there's something on the line, the winner has the right to be 3 to 4 fights away from the title. Oh man, that's so cool. Or in the case of Bonfim versus Brown, the winner has the right to be ranked and probably fight Daniel Rodriguez. Oh man, you might be able to get a fight with Gilbert Burns. I mean, Randy Brown isn't even ranked, for crying out loud. Like, what are we doing, bruh? I like Randy Brown a lot, and I think that realistically he should have won 7 of his last 8 and should already be ranked. I think this is a great win and a great spotlight for him to showcase his skill, but I can't justify having him main eventing a card against barely ranked Gabriel Bonfim when next week we have Beneil Dariush versus Benoit. Not Beneil versus Benoit would be a better main event. At least Beneil's top 10 ranked. Leon Edwards versus Carlos Prates is a title eliminator for Carlos Prates. Sean Brady versus Michael Morales is a title eliminator fight. That's happening next week. On the Saryuki and Hooker card, the co-main event is Gary versus Bilal Muhammad. We just had UFC 321 with Azamat Mirzakhanov versus Alexander Rakic. That can easily headline a fucking fight night alone. With legitimately a terrible undercard that could headline a fight night. But we just have to have Brown versus Bonfim and Garcia Onama as main events. I mean, UFC 323 has Blachowicz versus Bogdan Guskov and Moreno versus Tatsuro Taira. Moreno versus Tatsuro Taira is a fucking title eliminator fight. What the fuck has Brandon Moreno done to be demoted to 3-round fights? He's at a point in his career where he's such a fucking legend. We're talking about a top 5 all-time GOAT of his weight class. Why in the fuck is this dude being given a 3-rounder? Tatsuro Taira is 1 win away from challenging from the title. Why is he in a 3-rounder? And I get it's on a huge main card, a pay-per-view card, but like that could have easily been a 5-round main event in the Apex. Jan Blachowicz versus Bogdan Guskov. Yo, if Guskov KOs Jan Blachowicz, we're talking about him next against the winner of Pereira versus Olberg, or Pereira vacates Olberg versus Prohaska. Like, Bogdan Guskov could legitimately become a title threat next year if he gets that win. If he beats Jan Blachowicz, that'd put him one, maybe even two wins away from a title. And honestly, looking at the landscape of light heavyweight, he might not need another win after beating Jan Blachowicz to get a shot at the title. Volkan Oezdemir versus Alonzo Menifield. Shamil Gazia versus Sergey Spivak. I mean, Alex Perez versus Asu Almabayev can easily headline the fucking Apex card. If Asu Almabayev beats Alex Perez, now we're having Asu Almabayev in the top 5, and we're talking about he's one win away from a title shot. Does that really need to be on the fucking Qatar card, the UFC Qatar card? What have the Qataris done to get this amount of favor? That card's in 2 weeks. You really couldn't have Perez versus Asu Almabayev as the main event of this card? With just actual stakes? You know, that fight has legit stakes. Asu Almabayev, if he wins, is legitimately a win away from a title fight. But no, we can't get any of these title eliminator bouts as a fight night main event. We just had to have Mario Batista versus Umar Nurmagomedov, Jailton Almeida versus Alexander Volkov, and Alexander Rakic versus Asmat Mirzakhanov on the same card. You know how good for the career it'd be if Quinlan Salkield and Ikram Eliskarov or Ludovic Klein were on the main card of a pay-per-view? Nasrat Haqparast deserves to open up main cards for pay-per-views. He was a damn near ranked level fighter on like a 5-fight win streak. Ikram Eliskarov is legitimately a win away from being ranked. Ludovic Klein literally just got his shot at the rankings, and even though he didn't look the best against Gamrot, we all know Rebecca comes to scrap. Put that on the main card so we can get a crazy amount of eyes, right? And then give us a main event of Rakic Mirzakhanov for a fight night a week or two later. I don't think it'd fucking kill anybody to schedule it out and space it out like that. I'm not asking for crazy stacked Apex cards. I'm asking for the Apex cards for a main event to mean something. They're just like not fucking trying. It wouldn't be that big a deal if the UFC was gonna try out new commentators, different camera angles, editing styles. But I'm watching Jackson McVeigh and Zachary Reese go to war, and then I gotta sit through a goddamn Chick-fil-A ad in between rounds. The same ad they're gonna play over and over again for the next few hours. And then I'm looking at the cards coming up. You know, we just had Brown versus Bonfim as a main event, and I'm looking at the card coming up next week. Literally any fight on the main card outside of the title fights could have headlined this card that we just had, or the card last week, and it would have meant more. Edwards versus Protest is a 5-round main event. Sean Brady versus Michael Morales should be a 5-round main event. I mean, Sean Brady just beat Leon Edwards. He's getting cucked for a title shot right now. Leon Edwards is a fucking former champion. Why the fuck is he not fighting in a 5-rounder? You know, at this point in Edwards' career, it's 5 rounds or nothing. What do you mean? Oh yeah, we're gonna put him as not even as the feature fight on the pay-per-view, by the way. We're putting him as a fight on the main card. He's not opening up the main card, but he ain't the feature fight either. He's a fight on the main card. That could have been a main event. Do the Qataris really need Arman Saryukin versus Dan Hooker and Bilal Muhammad versus Ian Machado Gary, and Volkan Oezdemir versus Alonzo Menifield, and Sergey Spivak versus Shamil Gaziev, and Alex Perez versus Asalam Abayev. You couldn't spare one of those fights over for a main event? Like Perez versus Almabayev? Hell, I'll take a Spivak Gaziev main event. Because if Gaziev beats Spivak, we're talking about him in title contention, legitimately being a win away from fighting Tom Aspinall for the heavyweight title. It's just insane. I mean, Tagir Ulanbekov versus Kyoji Horiguchi has way more implications for that division than Brown does versus Bonfim, and that's buried on the fucking undercard, on the prelims of a fight night. What the fuck did the Qataris do to get the return of Kyoji Horiguchi? I feel like I'm losing my fucking mind and I'm living in the upside down. Because this makes no fucking sense. Like, genuinely. All these title eliminator fights just chilling around. Could be main events, not. And I can take it back to even at UFC 320. Prohaska versus Roundtree could have been a main event. Zalal versus Emmett should have been an Apex main event. We couldn't push that shit back a month so we have an actual main event for this Apex? Instead of getting Garcia versus Onama, two dudes who are barely ranked fighting for the opportunity to maybe fight Brian Ortega, who's on his way out. Like, of course it's better that Garcia won, but we're saying that in hindsight. There's a very real possibility that Garcia could have went in there and got slept by David Onama. Thank God he didn't, but like, if he did, now you have Onama. Are we really... It's easier to make fights for Steve Garcia moving forward because he's on a 7-fight win streak. But like, Onama would have been on a 4-fight win streak or a 5-fight win streak with a nasty KO over Steve Garcia, who was on a 6-fight win streak heading into that fight. Then it's like, damn, what do we do for him? I mean, I guess we can give you Josh Emmett. You see where I'm going with this? Like, I like Matt Schnell. I'm probably the only Matt Schnell fan who's not related to him or trained with him or anything. Just like, as a fan watching at home, I'm probably the only one in the fucking world. Why the fuck is he in the co-main event in 2025? Why is Joseph Morales in a co-main event of anything in 2025? Let's be fucking for real. This dude just got back into the UFC, and this is the first like UFC fighter he's fighting in his second stint in the UFC. Why is he on... I don't mind him being on the main card of a fight night. Co-main event over Salikov Medic, over Chris Padilla, who's unbeaten in the UFC, damn near ranked, versus Christian Leroy Duncan versus Marco Tulio. Two people who are legitimately a win or two outside of being ranked at middleweight. We gotta have Joseph Morales versus Matt Schnell. Like, I cannot stress enough that this is a great card. Even heading into it, there's like fights on this card where you just know. Like, Miles Johns is always there to scrap. Tisha Pennington and Denise Gomes are always in a scrap. Hawkett's making his highly anticipated debut in the UFC after talking crazy shit on the Contender Series. Cavalcanti and Bueno Silva are always down to scrap. Ricky Simone versus Howdy Barcelos are two ranked level bantamweights scrapping it out. Hyder Emil always goes to war because pace and pressure is exactly how he fights. Like, there's no way that this card was gonna be boring. But the stakes to the main event are non-existent, bro. Non-existent stakes for the main event. Oh my god, Bonfim slept Randy Brown, sort of, in the main event. What's next for him? Fucking Daniel Rodriguez? Let's really look at the UFC welterweight rankings real quick, so I can hammer this point home even further. Gabriel Bonfim just beat unranked Randy Brown. Let's look above him, because there's only one person ranked below him, and that's Mike Mallet. Daniel Rodriguez, Jeff Neal, Gilbert Burns, and Colby Covington. What the fuck are we doing? Oh man, he earned the right to get ducked by Colby Covington because he doesn't want to fight any up-and-comers. Oh man, he earned the right to fight Gilbert Burns. You know? Oh man, maybe he can get a fight with Joaquin Buckley, which is a proper main event in itself. But that's because Buckley's ranked number 7 in the weight class, not because Bonfim is ranked highly. And if Bonfim and Buckley was a main event for this card, I wouldn't even be mad because there's title implications. If Bonfim beats Joaquin Buckley, he's 1 or 2 wins away from a world championship. If Buckley beats Bonfim, he's 2 or 3 wins away from a world championship. He's like, and with the star power that Buckley brings, because he's just unapologetically black, 2 wins away. And it's so aggravating to look at the cards right next to these 2 cards and be like, yeah, none of these fights could have main evented. Like, these 2 fight nights, Garcia Onama and Bonfim Brown, are sandwiched in between the UFC 321 card, which was in Abu Dhabi, and the UFC 322 card, which is in New York City at MSG. We really couldn't have Leon Edwards versus Carlos Prates or Sean Brady versus Michael Morales in the spot of Bonfim Brown and given Garcia Onama a main event of Alexander Rakic versus Asmat Mirzakhanov. If that shit happens, I'm not complaining, because these are good cards. They just need main events to have something. But then we go from 3 title eliminators and 2 title fights on a pay-per-view to a card that literally means fucking nothing. The only thing, like in Garcia Onama, the only real fight with stakes was a title eliminator on the prelims, by the way. I have no clue why Dumont versus Vieira is on the prelims. That's a title eliminator fight. Dumont's probably getting a shot at the title after they finalize Harrison versus Nunes. And then Bonfim versus Randy Brown. I mean, this is a fucking nothing ass card. None of these fights really matter. Oh well, Denise Gomes picks up a win. Maybe she can get ranked. Maybe Daniel Marcos gets ranked. Maybe Jamal Emmers is 2 or 3 wins away from being ranked at featherweight. Maybe Chris Padilla can get someone who is just ranked at lightweight. Like, there's nothing. Like, none of these fights fucking matter. And then next week we get Leon Edwards versus Carlos Prates, Sean Brady versus Michael Morales, Beneil Dariush versus Benoit Saint-Denis, even Roman Kopylov versus Gregory Rodriguez. Like, that's the level of fight we had in that main event. Blanchfield versus Cortez, which is a legitimate title eliminator bout, is happening next week on the prelims. On the title eliminator bout for flyweight, by the way. The winner's probably going to fight Natalia Silva in a title elimination bout. And we can't spare none of these fights over for the Apex card. Like, Blanchfield versus Cortez really has to happen in front of people? Really? Edwards versus Prates couldn't have been a gritty underground kind of fight in the Apex? Sean Brady versus Michael Morales screams Apex main event. This is the kind of fight that, even though it's nice to have it in front of a crowd, deserves to be in the Apex because it has that gritty, underground, raw feeling. Unlike most other people, I actually like the UFC Apex, and I think it's a little bit necessary. There's certain fights that just don't hit the same if it's in front of a crowd of people. Some fights need to be in the Apex to be fully appreciated as far as the martial arts on display. Case in point, Ricky Simone versus Raoni Barcelos would not hit the same if there was like 18,000 people. Having that like in the Apex with like 30 people, you can hear individual people screaming and yelling. I fuck with that. That's the kind of fight that needs to be in the Apex because it's such a high level experience versus talent level scrap. These guys are so experienced. I'm watching them stand in the pocket, weaving shit back and forth like a little Dragon Ball Z fight. It has that raw underground feel, which is why I'm such a fan of the sport. That fight needs to be in the Apex. Hyder Emil versus Jamal Emmers is a raw, gritty kind of fight. That needs to be in the Apex. I fuck with that. Eros Medic versus Muslim Sadyukov absolutely belongs in the Apex. Raw, gritty. Chris Padilla is a great first fighter. Raw, gritty, underground feeling. I fuck with all of these fights being in the Apex. I don't fuck with these main events though. Especially when I know there's better on the horizon. At least the year ends out with Cap versus Royval, but shit, can't every Apex fight night be like this? Can't every Apex fight night be like Cap versus Royval? Literally a week after we get fucking Marab versus Jan, which has an undercard of Jan Blachowicz versus Bogdan Guskov, Brandon Moreno versus Tatsuro Taira. And on the prelims has a title eliminator in Macy Barber versus Karine Silva. Shits. Like this is like the world we're living in. And the UFC can't be fucking bothered because they're just gonna be like, well, you watched the fight and the fight was fun, so actually it wasn't a bad business. Fuck you. Take that Bellator B-League bullshit where at least the card is fun. That's why Bellator don't exist no more. They focus on putting on fun cards and no one gives a shit about them. And that's why they're gone. I come to the UFC to watch the best fight the best. And I want to watch the highest highest level display of mixed martial arts possible in the main event every single time. Brown is very underrated. Bonfim is very underrated as an up-and-coming contender. That's not the highest level when I know for a fact Sean Brady and Michael Morales are going to scrap in a week. That's the highest level. When I know Leon Edwards versus Carlos Pratis are gonna go to war next week, that's the highest level. When I know 2 weeks earlier, Asmat Mirzakhanov and Alexander Rakic fought. Volkov, Almeida, they fought. Umar versus Mario Bautista, they fought. Any of those could have been headliners to either of these two cards. And I wouldn't even be complaining. Because I know the best are fighting the best in the main event. If I wanted to just watch fun fights, I would have watched ONE FC, which I did. ONE FC had 2 incredibly fun cards on Friday. One Friday morning, one Friday night. But I don't want to watch that. I want to watch the best fight the best. And that's always been the selling point of the UFC. They have the absolute best fighters in the world, bar none. And I'm looking at what's going on with these UFC fighters, and it's just not the same, bro. Garcia, Onama, and Bonfim Brown ain't the best of their weight class. Especially when I'm hearing rumors of Arnold Allen versus Jean Silva being made for UFC 323. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck are we doing? Well, that's been my rant. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll be posting very, very frequently. I'm on that Anderson Silva like prime 16 fight win streak run. I'm locked in. We're dropping content 5 times a week. Let's fucking get it.